Hello, welcome to Engage2's YouTube channel. My name's Amelia Loye. I'm the Managing Director of Engage2, and today I have with me Cindy Lenferna del Motte from Harvest Digital Planning. Hi Cindy, welcome.
Hi Amelia, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. So Cindy is the head of the community and customer at Harvest Digital Planning. Tell me a little bit about your role, Cindy, there. And I know we met a little while ago before you joined Harvest. What was it about the company that really drew you to them?
Well, I was looking for a modern tech company that was mission-led, agile and adaptive, and really was going to deliver me that future of work culture. And I got all three at Harvest. And very specifically, they've allowed me to work in the digital engagement space again, which you know I'm very passionate about.
Yeah, so the Harvest owns the product The Hive, which is becoming quite popular in community engagement these days. Can you tell me a little bit about The Hive and what you're doing with their customers and community?
Yeah, sure. Well, Harvest as a company has been around about 10 years, and The Hive is an enterprise digital engagement platform. But the thing that I really love about it, Amelia, is that they are mission driven, and their mission is about empowering government and its citizens to collectively deliver a better future for people and place. And that is a really powerful mission. And it really drives everything that we do. So our technology is baked around that. Effectively, what we're doing is we're giving citizens an opportunity to participate in their neighborhoods and communities wherever they are.
Sure do that. Like, I know that Brian and Adam, who started the company, have a long background in planning, and the development of the product for them really came out of what they saw as a need in the market, and they've brought together some really complementary skills. I personally find the product very user friendly, and I've seen it used for lots of different types of planning processes. What are some of the other types of uses for the product?
Well, we're seeing that participation is really at the core of what customers are using it for. We see it being used in both local governments, state governments, and federal governments. And it's really in each of these different cases, they are looking for an opportunity of hearing the voices and getting their communities to participate. So it's all the way from plastics policies to planning playgrounds, to having a say around a particular policy that might be coming up. Or we've seen most recently some of the really interesting things that people have done around COVID-19. And some of those are just for the joy of connecting with community and making sure that they knew that their local council was there to support them. And some of that was actually some of the nicest work we've seen in a really long time.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, there's definitely more interest in online community engagement and virtual community engagement. I know that the Hive have recently done an update to the product so that you're able to actually use the Hive in real time. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So just recently, we have now got a Zoom integration, which allows you to host a Zoom meeting, but then also have the participation tools on the product right alongside that, so people can have a conversation and a forum and a chat. And that actually is maintained within the platform post the actual conference, so the conversation can continue. But most importantly, for those that weren't able to attend, they can actually come back and see what people were actually saying and still participate. We've also included YouTube Live on the platform. And another feature is live conversation feed. So the conversation in the forum and in the conversation tools are now live, which all sparks that online engagement when face-to-face is not possible.
Yeah, that's great, Cindy. Yeah, I used it in real time recently with the Engage Vic platform. So if you haven't heard of it, that's the whole of government engagement platform for Victoria who are using the Hive. And we actually used a whole series of your tools, the Visioner, the Conversation, is it called the Conversation?
Cool, yeah.
Yeah, okay, yep. Yeah, and we integrated that with MS Teams. So that was a real live virtual engagement using the online engagement platform, The Hive. So if you want to learn about how that went for us, it was a huge success, but we learned a lot about MS Teams and how to use MS Teams for workshops and really encourage participation and use some of these tools live. You can see that on the Engage2 blog. What are some of the other success stories that you've seen with COVID, Cindy?
I think the other piece that I'm really excited about is that we've been able to help government departments that are delivering social services or human services or emergency services to their communities. Often these are the government departments that always haven't had a lot of funding, that they've relied on that traditional community face-to-face engagement. And when COVID hit, they were the worst affected and the least prepared, both from a capability and from a capability perspective. And so we've really been helping in that space. And I'm really excited about some of the areas, whether it be bushfire recovery, which is still very much of the moment, even though COVID-19 has taken the airtime. The bushfire recovery and resilience programs are absolutely paramount, particularly in our rural and remote communities. So we've seen that sort of area coming together, but we've also seen schools and we've seen not-for-profits really adopting what we're working on. Recently, we developed a program with San Diego Food Safety Alliance, and this is all about food safety and bringing communities together around food. So there's just some beautiful projects that are being delivered wherever communities are coming together and trying to effect change.
Fantastic. If you haven't seen the Hive before, it's actually like a whole suite of engagement technologies. So I mentioned before the conversation tool, the visioner tools. It's also got a forum. I like to refer to these products as the engagement house or a toolkit for engagement. So it's typically bought by organizations who are wanting to have like a whole suite of products available to them for their engagement projects. Is there anything more you want to say about sort of the product and how it meets those sort of typical engagement needs, Cindy?
Well, I think what's most exciting for me is what customers are doing with it. And if I could just call out a couple of examples, Gladstone Neighbourhood Centre created an entire virtual neighbourhood centre during COVID-19. And this wasn't just a community engagement exercise, it actually enabled and required all of council to come together for the first time and put all of their skills and experience into a virtual neighbourhood centre. And I'm really proud of what Gladstone was capable of doing, but they could never have done it if they didn't have the digital technology. But the response from their community has just been a resounding thumbs up, you were there for us. And so it's really the results that are being achieved. And I think Engage Victoria is doing some phenomenal work. They're one of the biggest engagement platforms in the world. And the team there are just doing some extraordinary work, all the way from parks to infrastructure, to social projects, to health projects. And they could not do that if they weren't actually building the capability and capacity internally, but also experimenting and doing some really interesting work in this space.
Very true. So, I mean, technology is sort of a big part of what you do, and obviously you're really passionate about the different types of uses for the product and the needs for community. How do you think technology is transforming engagement? I mean, obviously COVID's had a huge impact on that, but technology itself, how do you think it's transforming the business of community engagement and the business of governing?
Well, I think really in order to understand that question, you actually have to be able to say, what is technology doing in the world today? And it's really driving so much of our lives. And for me, I think it's about building capability. And you and I have spoken about this many, many times. I feel like what we're starting to see is the organizations that are building digital capability into their organizations are able to pick up these engagement tools and slot them into their overall tool set and serve their, whether it be customers or community or citizens, better. And so I'm really excited about the part that technology is playing in that. But as you and I have spoken about, not all technology is even, and we need to make sure that technology doesn't leave humans behind. And that's the part that I'm really proud of the work that we do at Harvest, is that we bake into our very heart of our product those democratic principles and that notion of how do we encourage participation online. And technology can be bent, but you have to have that intention right at the beginning to actually want the human interaction and to make sure that you're really considering things like bias and groupthink and how do you get that representative voice coming through. So I think technology is incredibly powerful, but it requires a human intention. And we have that at Harvest. And that's the thing that gets me out of bed every morning to see what is possible.
I think that's really, really beautifully put, Cindy. And I think, it can really be, a lot of people come to me looking for the right tool for their engagements. And I think having clarity about that intention, particularly if it's to increase your reach or reach a representative sample of the population or to target your engagement at a specific group in the community. I mean, the technology has the potential to enable that, but you've got to have clarity about what it is you're trying to achieve for the
That's
tool
right.
to be able to facilitate that social outcome.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think the other thing that technology is capable of doing is it's able to do good at scale. And that's something that I think that we really need in these days, in these new normal days. We need that scale capability. And I think it's also cost effective. So the combination of those two things really is important to me, but it has to be done with intent. And when you combine all of that bundle together, it's pretty powerful.
I'm curious about where you think the industry is going, because you've spoken about a couple of case studies there where it sounds like Gladstone connected service to engagement. And also we talked a little bit about Engage Victoria and the Department of Premier and Cabinet there, how they're doing a whole of government transformation around engagement. Where do you think, I know that for them, that's very wedded to their engagement practice, both offline as well as online, and also how they serve through engagement. What are you seeing as kind of an advancement of the industry and how technology is enabling that?
Well, I think it all comes down to us having and wanting a say about the places that we live. And we see the global activism that's happening everywhere, whether that be on climate change or more recently around race and gender. People want to have a voice, and they do have a voice. And so it's about being able to channel those voices, but also provide the education around the context. And I think there's a great opportunity for engagement technology to bring people along the journey in an educated way, tell them what's possible, give them the research that's already happened, ask for them for their input. And I think we often look at our communities as being residents or citizens, but we don't understand that these are scientists and engineers and physicists and doctors. They have huge amounts of experience and capability and knowledge that they can bring to problems. And I'm really excited about some of the projects that I'm seeing overseas. So whether it be at Barcelona or some of the projects that are bubbling out in South America, where they're actually tapping into their communities at this level, where they can say, you're not just a resident, but you're a doctor, you're an engineer. How might we solve this problem? And then when people solve that problem for their neighborhood, suddenly it becomes theirs and they maintain it. They probably even want to help implement it, but they become proud of it. And I think that that's what's going to make a really healthy, bubbling community going forward. And I think that that's the difference, where it becomes governments telling us what we're wanting to do and sending us a survey, to actually engaging and participating and having active dialogue and bringing some of these skills and experience. And that's where potentially things like innovation and creativity have the opportunity of playing a part. So I think that those are the things that we're starting to see small bubbles of. And those that have the capability of using digital for that will generate some really interesting outcomes.
I'm definitely seeing the more innovative people in the practice who have been trying this for a little while, getting a bit more mature about how they, as you say, leverage that collective intelligence and also the wonderful ideas in the room, even if it's online. Cindy, I also got from what you were just saying there that you can be quite savvy about the way you present information and get people to consider information rather than just pushing out a document and a survey. If you use these tools in quite creative ways and really think through how to leverage the potential of the products and present the information well, I think you can actually increase deliberation online. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think it has to start with the intent, right? That you actually want that and you're prepared to go the extra mile. And so what we're starting to see is organizations that say, that's the intention of what we want to do. So then how might we do this? And they don't just do what they've done in the past. They actually are starting to think outside the box. They're bringing in creatives. They're bringing in humanities people. They bring in elements and voices from the community. They bring in historians. And when you actually bring these diverse voices into a room and perspectives that actually have the intention of wanting that deliberation, some really amazing outcomes are delivered. And I think that we know that that is where innovation happens. And that's also where really good outcomes happen, where you actually bring these diverse voices into the room that allow people to actually understand the different perspectives.
Nice. So technology can not only help you increase reach and do things at scale cheaper, you could potentially increase diversity and look at the kinds of people you bring into the room to leverage the intelligence in your community as well. I like
right.
going with this, Cindy. So
I think that the one thing that I would say though, Amelia, is that it takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time and thinking and planning, like those kind of things. You don't just pull out a template and put a few things out. And so I think it can't be underestimated that if you really have that intention, putting the effort in and putting the planning in and bringing those voices together really ends up making so much of a robust outcome.
Yeah, I've started rethinking closing the loop. And I'm now looking at that as almost a double helix, that, you know, there's a continuous dialogue with the community where you're building upon information that you've been collecting. So you take it in-house, consider it, but then take it back out again and get more feedback on it, that more iterative design and continuous learning and continuous engagement. I think in the past, we've typically thought about engagement as a 6-week or 4 to 6 week consultation process. So you do need to think beyond that if you want to identify that potential in your community and leverage it, I think.
Well, when we look at those innovation principles, they talk about diverging and converging, the double diamond effect. So if you do it once, you only get a certain number of voices and you only get a certain number of impact. But as soon as you build on that and send it out again, based on what you've already learned, like you just get a deeper understanding and a more robust perspective, which I think leads to more impactful projects and results.
Fantastic. I think that you're really, I love the way you think about engagement, Cindy. It's very deep and rich, and it's great to see you working across so many different projects. Do you think, like I often talk about these technologies as really sort of institutionalizing the principles of representative democracy. What are your thoughts about how representatives democracies can operate? Because obviously at the end of the day there's a term and they've still got to make decisions and they're elected by a majority. What are your thoughts about the way engagement and these kinds of technologies can enrich representative democracy?
Well, I think it goes back for me to that word that we use, which is intention. To actually have representative democracy, you have to have that intention. You have to put the time into it. And it means sometimes actually going outside and thinking outside the box. But I think that technology is an enabler, but I don't think it's the only thing that's available to us. I think in these current times, like, let's not forget about mail. Let's not forget about, picking up the phone. And I think used in concert with all of the things that we've got, technology is incredibly powerful, but it's not the only piece. And if we think about it that way, it also means we don't leave anyone behind. So if we're thinking about phone or mail or posters, like we look at some of the bushfire affected communities, the word of mouth around the pub, or the poster, there's all of these things that actually are brought together. And then it's about sharing that information, Amelia. I think one of the things that I particularly think we don't do enough of is actually sharing our success stories in Australia. This worked over here, sharing it with the next community so that they might be able to learn about it. And that's one of the things that we're really trying to build at Harvest. None of our customers is competing with each other. In fact, they're learning from each other. And so being able to cross-pollinate, it worked over here. This is why it worked. What can you take out of that? Everyone's got their own DNA in each suburb, but learning from each other and actually growing and building that democracy and making sure that representative democracy is seen as possible and not difficult is really important.
Well, Cindy, it's really lovely talking to you about this. I'm going to try and summarize a couple of principles that I think came throughout our conversation. Clarity of intent, having a really clear purpose for your engagement and intention for engagement, not just for consultation, but potentially beyond that, and the kinds of people that you're trying to include in your engagement. Being creative about the methods. that you use to engage so that you don't leave anyone behind. And ideally you're integrating both your on and offline methods as well, I think, to increase your reach, but also increase that diversity. And then the other thing I think is a really beautiful way to wrap up, which is the importance of learning from and with each other, that you know, for engagement, but also as a collective of people in the community engagement practice. So it's really lovely to hear from you. Is there anything you want to add as a summary?
No, I think that really, if those three things, if we could work together to be able to embrace those, I think that we'll all move forward together, and all communities will have the opportunity to have a say and participate in what's happening in their neighbourhood. And I think that's going to be a really healthy thing for Australia.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you so much for making the time today, Cindy. It's really great to talk to you. If you are interested in peer-to-peer learning and learning more about technology for engagement, please join us at the Engage Tech Forum, which is happening on the 28th of July 2020. You'll be able to meet Cindy and I there. And if you want to speak to Cindy directly, you can find her on LinkedIn, and you can also find Harvest DP, Harvest Digital Planning, on LinkedIn as well. Engage2, you can find at engage2.com.au. Thank you for making the time to be with us today, Cindy, and also everyone listening.
Thank you very much for having me, Amelia. Look forward to the conference.
Me too. Bye.
See ya.